You're listening to Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars begins now.
All right. Hello, everybody. I'm Eric Vansel.
I'm Daryl Sanders.
And we're your hosts for this podcast today. So, once again, I mean, not to turn this into, COVID update number 25 or whatever, but,
medical update.
Yeah, exactly. My medical update, which seems to be the theme of every show for the last couple of weeks. Yeah, man, I'm still not really feeling good at all. So, you guys will have to, bear with me. I mean, I didn't even go to work today or anything, man. I just, I've been, but once again,
I get it. You want to stay home and do some Star Wars stuff.
Yeah, right.
I get it.
Yeah, I wish. Oh, if only. But
I know, right?
Well, and it's one of those things where, fortunately, I'm basically, I got this nice little setup in the house, so all I really have to do is stumble over to the desk and, pretty much do the show, right? It's not like actually going to work or something. So, we've actually got a lot of news this time. They've released a schedule. Some of it actually has some firm dates. Some of it is the typical to be determined, but we do have a schedule on, everything that Disney Plus is going to be throwing at us in 2022, Star Wars wise, which I think is cool.
Yeah. Now, before we even roll out into this, with all the content that's coming out, because this will be like the first time we've had like a bunch of shows kind of, I won't say going at the same time, because I don't think they would do that because they might confuse people. But just the fact that we just have so much in a year, I mean, we're used to like maybe having one show, maybe two at the max, but 2022 promises to kind of have like 4 or 5 different shows, throughout the period of the year, which is great for me and you and all the true hardcore Star Wars fans. But the casual fan, do you think that would be too much Star Wars overload for them?
I think it could run into that danger, but then again, I think that part of the problem is that right now, because you have to remember, there's a couple of things that are really unique to this whole thing. Number one, you basically, I mean, you see pictured here, we got Ahsoka, we got Obi-Wan, and we had the Bad Batch. So, a couple of points to make right off the bat. I don't really see a problem overlapping the live action and the animated shows. I could actually see that happening. Because even though they're Star Wars, I think in some ways they appeal to different audiences. I think there's people who, for instance, were watching The Mandalorian or the Book of Boba Fett and maybe not necessarily tuning into the Bad Batch or Rebels or the Clone Wars. Of course, I think the people that were watching Rebels and the Clone Wars and stuff were watching the live action stuff. I think the opposite is true. But, I don't know. I think that another thing that you have to remember, besides the fact that I could see some overlap in the releasing of the animated versus live action, fact of the matter is, 90% of this stuff is live action. And that's another thing that's unique, because up until now, we've only had 2 live action shows at the same time. Well, not at the same time, but this is only the second, same year. Second live action show. And the thing is that I think that one of the things that's important to remember is that people have been basing all of their opinions on this stuff because they've only had one show at a time, right? So first we had a couple of seasons of The Mandalorian, that, of course, being the first Star Wars live-action show. People were basically seeing what a Star Wars television show that was done live-action can look like. Whereas the Book of Boba Fett comes out, that offers a little bit of a different thing. Some people love it, some people hate it, some people either like it or dislike it. There's there really hasn't been any middle ground, really. People either like the show or they don't. So I think what's unique about this opportunity is you're going to see a wide variety of different types of shows. And I think because of that, and because they're all coming out in this 1 year, I think you're very much going to get, hey, if this show doesn't appeal to you, there's another one coming up in a few weeks. And I could almost see them even overlapping them. I don't think they will, but you do make a good point. I mean, there's a bunch of them that are coming out.
Yeah, I mean, because we'll go through them, but right now we're in the Book of Boba Fett. That's kind of scheduled to end February 9th. That's kind of like when we're get the last episode of that.
Right. And so, to start this process, I mean, we have the Book of Boba Fett. That's scheduled to end in February. And, we put this on the list because, well, for one, we got the article from, at least I got it from Decider.com. I don't know if, I think that's the same. So, because a lot of times you'll send this stuff to me, but sometimes, if I don't go back to the chat or whatever, I'll just use a search term. And sometimes more than one site will provide this stuff. But yeah, this site's provided some dates. But yeah, the reason why we included the Book of Boba Fett on this is because it does, I would say the bulk of it, at least half of it, is in 2022. And that's kicking everything off. And like you said, it does basically end on February 9th. And so we're going to see, where this is going to go. And more importantly, I think it's going to be interesting to see when they end up premiering season 2 of this show. Because, you could say, well, if they do it every year, then maybe we get season 2 in December again. Or maybe because they've got so many other things in the pipeline, maybe we won't see it until sometime in 2023, even as late as December of 2023. Because we're going, and we'll get to it later, obviously, but we got season 3 of The Mandalorian coming up as well, and that's had a little bit of a gap, which I believe is over a year. So, this is going to be
2 years.
Yeah, well, it's getting there. It actually, I think season 2 was like in October or something of 2020. And so if they had followed suit, we should have gotten it in October, November, or whatever of this year. But we didn't.
Of 21.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Told you, not feeling well today. So
I got you.
Yeah, you're going to have to back me up on this one. So yeah, because of that, I think that you could start to see, I guess, more of a staggering of the shows where they take a little bit more time. Maybe they don't want to, because I mean, when The Mandalorian was the only thing, they could release it every year. But if you got 5-6 series, and again, it's significant to note that there's a lot of shows that are not on our list. The Acolyte's not on our list. Rangers of the New Republic, which, depending on the day, is either in production or canceled. What's the other one? Lando, that they had announced. Yeah, nobody's even said anything about that. So, I mean, who knows? It's going to be interesting to me. It's not just about, and this is why I wanted to frame this whole thing around the Book of Boba Fett, because we know the Book of Boba Fett is now going to be a multi-season series. And so consequently, not only do you have all these new series that are premiering in 2022, but you have to wonder how they're going to handle how they do the seasons. So in other words, say Ahsoka, well, we won't even get there yet. Let's just look at the Book of Boba Fett. Came out in December of 2021. The season 2 come out December of 2022. It's like, when you have all these different series, how are they going to handle the release schedule? They could also follow the Star Trek model. Star Trek has basically been releasing the series because they're kind of doing the same thing as Star Wars. They've got a bunch of stuff. You know, they started out where they had Discovery, which is now in its 4th season. It's currently airing. Then they came out with that animated, more comedic series, Lower Decks. They have Picard. They're coming out with Strange New Worlds, which is sort of a Captain Pike Spock thing. And so now they're building up all this stuff, and it's kind of sporadic on how they're releasing the season 2s of all these shows. They've just recently announced when they're releasing season 2 of Picard and all that, which comes out in March. So it's really going to be interesting to see how Star Wars on Disney Plus is handled, because it's not just about, okay, when's Andor coming out? When's Obi-Wan coming out? You know, that kind of thing. But it's also, well, when's season 3 of The Mandalorian? When's season 2 of Book of Boba Fett? When are they going to release season 2 of Andor or Obi-Wan? If they're indeed multi-season. Well, and the Bad Batch, too. I don't necessarily put the animated series in this part of the discussion, only because there's precedent for that. We've had multiple animated series, and they're pretty much tracking a nearly yearly basis on those. So, you know, we'll just have to see how that goes. But certainly the Book of Boba Fett has kicked off our 2022, and it's only the beginning, right?
Mm-hmm.
So next up, we have, of course, the Obi-Wan series. Now, the Obi-Wan series, this is one of the ones that does not really have an official release date per se, but it's looking like they're announcing it on the spring of 2022. That's pretty much. I mean, have you heard anything differently, or is that pretty much what you've heard?
Yeah, well, yeah, I've heard pretty much it's going to be spring. I mean, everybody's really predicting that it's going to be the big release for May 4th, which is on a Wednesday this year.
Oh, really?
So, you know.
Yeah. Oh, I did not realize that.
So May the 4th is on a Wednesday. So,
and that's when they decided they're going to release all their. Yeah, they're releasing all their new episodes on Wednesdays now, instead of the Friday thing.
Mm-hmm. So Obi-Wan probably will drop on May the 4th, and it'll be perfect. I mean, that's the perfect time to drop a show like that.
Yeah, I would think so. The other interesting thing, why I think that they should do it in the spring, May even is a little late. I mean, I honestly think that it would have been good for them to release it at the end of March, early April, because I think it would be a good idea to capitalize on the storyline of the Book of Boba Fett. Because even though they do take place at different time periods, there's still a thematic similarity between them.
Yeah, I just think that Obi-Wan seems like something that would be a spring type of show. Like,
no doubt.
And you really don't have a whole lot of shows that really are that debut in the spring. So I think this is a perfect time to monopolize that space. I mean, Star Wars usually releases movies, used to, kind of release movies around that time. But I think now going back to Disney Plus, I think this is be a perfect window for a lot of shows, because a lot of shows are kind of ending, by then.
Yeah.
And for Disney Plus to kind of drop another, especially like a highly anticipated show like Obi-Wan, I think that's a great space to capitalize on fandom.
I think so. And again, one of the things that I wanted to do with each one of these shows, I mean, the Book of Boba Fett's going on now, and we're doing a review on that. So that's one of the reasons why I didn't really want to get too heavily into that discussion. But moving forward with these other shows, one of the things that I've been hyping up when I've been, talking about this week's show is that we need to talk about, too, what do we expect to actually see in these shows? What do we need to see in each of these shows? So I guess we could just say, what do you think we're going to see in Obi-Wan? And we've actually learned a lot about the Obi-Wan show. We know that Hayden Christensen's going to be in it, and
Sure.
we know that there's going to be some off-world stuff that's going to happen. We know that there's going to be another duel with Darth Vader, which, of course, has been
Mm-hmm.
a topic of many of our discussions on this show.
True.
Um,
Yeah.
and we have talked about the Obi-Wan series quite a bit, actually. In fact, we did a whole cast rundown, I remember, on one of our shows.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We did some of the what do you expect to see. So, I mean, just as kind of a quick recap, we pretty much know, thanks to this thing getting a little bit of traction, but what do you think we need to see in at least season 1 of the show?
I think we need to see, where Obi-Wan is, of course, where his state of mind, of course, at this point, because he's older yet wiser, and in a manner of speaking, more powerful. So, with that, but he's still, emotionally torn, because I can understand, because if you got to think, you have to really think about like where he is right now. He's an older Jedi, right? And he sees that his former Padawan best friend brother has teamed up with the most powerful Sith Lord in the galaxy, and they're running around running the entire galaxy right now, and he's kind of quarantined,
Yeah.
on Tatooine, quarantined on Tatooine. So he's quarantined on Tatooine, because he's watching after his son and waiting for him to grow up so he can make sure that he kind of gets on the right path, and hopefully he can be the new light for the galaxy. And that's got to be a lot of weight. And of course, we all know, just being human beings, when we have bad things happen to us, anytime you're left alone by yourself, you're going to start thinking about all the bad and disparaging things that might have happened in your life sometimes, and you kind of reflect and like, man, I wish I would have done this, or if I'd have done this, maybe this would have been a different outcome. So I really expect Obi-Wan to kind of go through those paces. But then I also want to see, him he realizes that he's still a Jedi Knight, or a Jedi Master at this point, and he still needs to subtly, still have some influences as much as he can. I definitely need to see how this Vader Obi-Wan duel, like that's, I mean, of course, that's like has to happen. Like I have to see how that even transpires,
Yeah, how
because
they're even going to handle that exactly.
yeah, and especially without ruining Episode 4, A New Hope.
Yeah, what it really needs to do, and I mean, I agree with all that. And in fact, I'm going to take it a little step further, because what I would really like to see is a juxtaposition on how Obi-Wan handled the failure versus Luke, because really there's somewhat of a similarity there. When Luke basically is training Ben Solo, and then Ben leaves him, basically turns into Kylo Ren and goes to Snoke. That's very much like how Obi-Wan was training Anakin. Anakin becomes Darth Vader, teams up with Palpatine. I mean, there's a parallel path there, but yet they handle it very differently. And I
And
think
he really got to think. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I think that the major reason for that is because, unlike Luke, Obi-Wan had a mission. It's like, yes, you did fail the whole, galaxy or whatever, but you have to watch over this boy. That's your task. So even though I agree that I think we do need to see some of Obi-Wan maybe struggling with the aftermath of what happened in Revenge of the Sith, we also need to see how he handles, okay, what makes him different from Luke is I have a job to do. And that
Yeah,
probably snaps him out of it.
yeah, and something that just kind of really just dawned on me is that Obi-Wan's really, um if you really look at like what he's had to deal with as being like a Jedi Knight slash Master, it's kind of like, I can understand why this guy, will probably like just be depressed, honestly, because if you think about it, he's been put in charge after Qui-Gon dies. He he goes and says, "Hey," to Yoda, like, "Hey, I want to train this kid because my master told me to keep on with the training. And this kid is supposed to be the chosen one."
Mm-hmm.
That's a heck of a lot of responsibility to be put in charge of the chosen one. Then the chosen, they become best friends, almost like brothers. And then, of course, Anakin betrays, and now he's become Darth Vader, the terror of the galaxy. Then Yoda comes to Obi-Wan and says, "Now you have to take his son and make it so now you're taking the most powerful, like who was supposed to be the most powerful Jedi ever lived, pretty much, or the chosen one. Now you have to, and it's like he's getting a chance to correct or right his wrongs with Luke." And I always
Mm-hmm.
wonder if Yoda did that intentionally, like, okay, yeah, you failed here, but I'm giving you another chance to do it again from scratch, though, because remember, at the time when he said, he's like, well, he's too old. Well, now you have a infant Luke now, who now you can mold from day one. And so
Yeah, I
I'm really
never.
curious to see. Yeah,
That's a
it
good
just
point.
dawned on me, and I was just, and I'm like, wow, like he's been in charge of the most powerful force users like ever,
Mm-hmm.
and he's responsible for teaching them and protecting them and keeping them, on the right path. And so that's what makes episode 4 so interesting, because he's like, well, as a human, as a living being, I can no longer keep up, but as a force ghost, I could be anywhere.
Well, and I
And so
think
that's why, he
another.
eventually sacrifices himself.
Yeah, and I think another element to that too. I mean, there's just there's a lot to unpack there, but I think that one of the things that you have to look at is that, well, there's a few things. Number one, the other difference between where we see Luke at in the Last Jedi versus Obi-Wan after Revenge of the Sith is that Qui-Gon also appears to him.
Yeah.
So he still has a little bit of that guidance and probably a little bit of therapy as well. Um,
Mhm.
you're probably right, though. I never really thought about that, but yeah, Yoda might have kind of the same way that he underhandedly had Ahsoka train under Anakin because he
Mhm.
knew that if Anakin had to be a teacher, that would help him be a better student.
Yep.
And so there's probably a little bit of that too, where, he looked at Obi-Wan and realized he probably had the weight of all this pretty much on him. And it's just like, look, if you have this job and it's almost like a do-over, like you said,
Mhm.
maybe then, maybe that would work out. Maybe that would help him through it. And the other thing, if you look at it, you bring up a good point where you say that he's training the two most powerful Force users, at least light side ones,
Mhm.
ever. Obi-Wan's kind of a perfect teacher for that because of the way that he just naturally is. He has that patience. Yeah, he's very much a by the book kind of guy. He knows when to sort of hold the
Rein
leash a
you
little
in.
bit loosely,
Yep.
but then also rein you in. And I think that honestly in this show, we need to see that.
Yeah, I think we need to see the growth in his, how he handled, because you got to think about it. We keep forgetting that Obi-Wan had to grow up too, though,
Mm-hmm.
because when you see him, as okay, he had just basically become a Jedi Knight because he killed Maul, so he thought. So really,
Yeah, right.
was he really a Jedi Knight? You know what I mean?
Well,
But
it's one of those things too where, when little Anakin's like, well, no one could kill a Jedi, and Qui-Gon's like, oh, I wish that were true. Well, maybe it
yeah.
is in the Sith's case because Maul is like the Jason Voorhees of the Star Wars series.
Yeah, I know, man. So with him killing, Maul allegedly, and but he's still like a young, he's probably
He was
20,
he was 19. He was 19 in episode 1.
yeah, yeah.
He's
So he's like
29
19,
in
20 years
2, and
old.
then he's like, I don't know, 32 or 3 or something in 4. And you bring up a good point because The interesting thing is most of Obi-Wan's growth and development was between episodes 1 and 3. Because if you really look at him the way he is in episode 3, he's pretty much where he's at in episode 4. I mean, yeah, younger and, obviously, I mean, he's in the middle of a war at that point, but so he's in a different place in life. But as far as growth, Ronaldo joins us, by the way. Hi, Ronaldo.
Yeah, Ronaldo.
Yeah, one of the things that I did, too, this is a good time to plug the whole subscriber thing, because sometimes, during live streams and everything, you get spam comments and stuff. So I turned it on to only subscribers can chat now. Which, of course, the happy thing is because when you subscribe to the channel, it actually helps us. It's also good, too, because if you want to chat, you got to subscribe. Of course, I'm sure most of the people that have been chatting with us are subscribing, but it's kind of like a little bonus, I guess. But yeah, so most of the growth is between episodes 1 and 3. By the time we get to Obi-Wan in episode 3, he pretty much has that wisdom, that patience, that knowledge, and all that stuff. Yes, of course, there's a lot of lessons he has to learn to get him to episode 4. But, it's kind of, again, it's another juxtaposition with Luke, right? Luke did most of his growth during 4 and 6. And then after that, he's kind of, I mean, sure, he's going to be a little bit wiser, especially by the time we get to episode 7, because that's 30 years. But there's still 20 between, Oh, Dwight's there, too. And,
Dwight.
And Dwight agrees with the subscriber thing. Yeah, it was... it was one of those happy accidents. To be honest, it was... I think I kind of said it that way, and I was like, this is probably a good idea, because really, you want... I keep bouncing back and forth between our channel and Obi-Wan here, but...
I know, it's like Boba Fett, man.
Yeah.
It's like you having a Tusken Raider dream. And
Exactly. Well, when you see me in the back to tank, I'm going to talk about the channel. Actually, I could use the back to tank because I started out this show by talking about how terrible I feel, so it kind of works out. But with the channel, yeah, I just started thinking about it, that, if you're not subscribing to us, then you're not really invested, so why should you be chatting? I mean, it sounds kind of harsh, but, that's kind of, if you think about it, that's kind of the way it is, right?
You don't get the right to talk to me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, people that, maybe, look, there's a lot of reasons why people don't necessarily subscribe to a channel. So, I mean, the comment section is there. But as far as like a live stream, there should be, I mean, we do, by the way, have
a reward.
Yes, there is a reward. There's just a lot of things that are cool as far as, I mean, we got the whole buymeacoffee.com thing. There's a link to that in the description, by the way. I mean, we would love to get some monetary donations to help us continue this channel. But I mean, at the very least, it's all good. If you guys just hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the notification bell, that immensely helps our channel and puts us in front of more people that will hopefully subscribe and then eventually join the discussion. Speaking of joining with the discussion, Ronaldo basically says, I can't wait to see Obi-Wan this year, and I'm positive the fight with Vader will be good. Okay. I'm glad you think... Well...
I think it will, especially like considering.
Yeah, I definitely agree. But I mean, I think that one thing that you have to keep track of here is you have to understand that a lot of people will say these things about, this is going to happen, that's going to happen, or this is going to be good, that's going to be good. But then when it actually premieres, people then start to complain about it. If you really stop and think about it, that's just... Everybody was swearing up and down the Book of Boba Fett was going to be good. And now everybody's complaining about it.
Well, yeah, because I mean, I think it's just, once again, they're basing it off the trailer, and the trailer makes it look one way versus, because you don't have things in context. You just see it. You're just seeing a bunch of clips, and the clips look cool. You're a Boba Fett fan, or you want to know more about him. So And of course, once again, they're basing it off the Mandalorian too, and they're in some sense of of it. So I think that's kind of why a lot of people kind of had that, um, I guess, foresight into what Boba Fett was going to be. But um, with Obi
Yeah.
Wan though, so I think we definitely need to see, like I said, his growth. I want to kind of see on the political side, like what's going on with the rebellion. I'm really curious to see if we're going to see any of that. I mean, I know it's called Obi-Wan, so I know he's the focus of the show, but I kind of do want to see what that's,
Yeah,
what
no,
that's like.
you've got a really good. Oh, Boatwright family and comics is back. Wow, we got the whole gang here
All
tonight.
right, all right, vote right, hey man.
No, you have a good point there too. Definitely seeing what's going on with the rebellion with the Empire. This is taking place 10 years after Revenge of the Sith. We really need to see that part of it too. And honestly, I think that's how they're bringing Vader in. Now, they don't really say anything about Tarkin. It would make... Oh my goodness, Darren is joining us tonight. What?
Uh-oh. Gang,
I know,
gang's
it's like...
growing.
I mean, it's kind of weird that, See, I switched it to subscriber only and everybody chats in. That's very bizarre. But what's up, Darren?
Imagine
Yes, it
that.
has been a while. Well, this is a good show to watch, I guess. But we do really need to see where a lot of this stuff is going politically with the Empire, with the rebellion. It taking place basically in between episodes 3 and 4. We really need to see where all that's going.
Yeah.
Ronaldo basically says, the only bad thing I have with the show, he's talking about the Book of Boba Fett, is I'm tired of Tatooine. But see, that's what I'm talking about. When now we're talking about Obi-Wan, is that a lot of people are like, oh yeah, I think that this Vader fight's going to be cool, and I think that that's going to be cool, and I think that's going to be cool. Now, keep in mind, for the record, I'm really enjoying the Book of Boba Fett. Are there some issues? Yes. But overall, I think it's good, and I think that if you understand the tone of the series, then you'll get into it a little more. And I still also stand by the fact that once you see the thing in totality, I think there's 7 or 8 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Once they're all there, that's why I really wish they had just dropped this all at once, because I think that's going to help the show. It's a slow burn. When you release the stuff a little at a time like this, and you kind of get to the, to the end, you're kind of like, okay, well, not much happened. But when you really stop and think about, the previous few episodes, and you take it like in maybe 2 or 3 episode chunks, it's a little bit different. So, I mean, you do have to keep that in mind when you're seeing that. And I think that with Obi-Wan, there's a lot of chance to really enrich the entire saga in this one show, because there's a lot of key things that happen in between these episodes, or episodes 3 and 4. All right, so that's Obi-Wan.
All right,
you ready to move
Obi-Wan.
on?
Yep.
All right.
Yep. Let's go.
Any last minute things you need to say about Obi-Wan? All right. So here we go. So now we have the Andor series. Now the Andor series is really interesting, because the Andor series really has been shrouded in a lot of mystery.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
as it should. It's a spy thriller.
Well, the thing about Andor is that there's been a lot of things that have come out, but really, when you stop and think about it, as much has been revealed, you don't really know about it. I mean, with Obi-Wan, there's been a lot of things that have been coming out, but with Andor, not a whole lot is known.
Yeah, I mean, one of the cool things I love about Andor is that the things that we do know, Diego Luna is returning, Genevieve O'Reilly is returning as Mon Mothma, Forrest Whitaker is coming back as Saw Gerrera, which is cool.
Which I think that is so cool. I'll tell you, that was one of the pieces of news that I really love was the fact that he was going to be reprising his role.
Yeah. Because I don't think we didn't get really enough of him, and we didn't really get a chance to see who he really was in live action in Rogue One. So I'm really hoping to explore that in Andor. And the cool thing about Andor is that this particular show is actually like um, the largest episode orders. It has 12.
Oh, that's
So it's
right.
Yeah, it has 12 episodes, which is, and this show was supposed to, debut mid to late 2022. So I'm guessing this is probably going to go I'll probably say maybe September. I'm thinking September seems like a good spot for this show to debut because, now that's when a lot of fall stuff comes in. That's when people are kind of going back to school. Um and for 12 episodes, I can see that um that's going to be that's 12 weeks of content.
Yeah, but see, here's the problem that I have though, and this kind of goes into the discussion that we were talking about earlier in tonight's show, is the fact that when you have all these shows that are going to be debuting this year, and that's
Mhm.
not even getting into the when does the season 2 come out discussion. When you have all these shows that are debuting, you have to try to time it. It's almost like you can't really avoid overlap unless you bleed it into 2023. Because even if it's only 8 to 10 episodes, you're still talking 8 to 10 weeks.
Mhm.
That's why I almost think that with all these shows, it would almost be better to do the more Cobra Kai method. Just drop them all at once. Let people
And
digest
may,
that for 3 months and then drop the next show.
and that may happen for some series. They may do that.
I wonder if they do. I wish they had done that with the Book of Boba Fett. Like I said, I think it really would have benefited from that. And, but if they keep on with this whole weekly series thing, though, it's almost like you can't help it to have overlap because if they don't, you have to remember that come fall or whatever, we're going to start to see The Mandalorian, maybe the second season of Book of Boba Fett. You still got Ahsoka coming out. I mean, which of course we're going to talk about all this, but it's like if you have a 12 episode series, right, that's going to take up 12 weeks, that's like 3 months. So you almost have to do that in July so you can free up your September and then free up your December.
Right.
It just really depends on what they want to do. So Ronaldo basically chimes in, I hope the episodes are longer. And I think that it's interesting because with the Book of Boba Fett, which again, we only have really 2 live action series that we can base this stuff on. And one of the things that I've really been happy about is that you're seeing more 40, 50-minute episodes with the Book of Boba Fett. On the other hand, you do see a couple of 34s too. And I agree with you, man. I would love to see, because if you look at a lot of these other series that are streaming, a lot of times they'll average out roughly the same, 48, 54, that kind of thing. And I would really like to see the same thing happen with a lot of these upcoming Star Wars series. I would like to see episodes that are not only longer but consistent.
Well, it seems like a lot of times with Star Wars, they're taking more of the novel approach or book approach. Every chapter isn't the same length, I mean,
So
some
it's kind of
chapters are
like it's
shorter
as
than
long
others.
as it needs to be kind of thing.
Exactly. And I mean, and on one hand, you kind of like that because at least you're getting out what you need to get out, and maybe that's how they're trying to create the build because when you're watching a movie, like we say all the time, watching even say Book of Boba Fett, right? And
Mm-hmm.
let's just say it was all an hour show. Well, you got an 8-hour movie. If it was 8 episodes, an hour each, it's an 8-hour movie, right? So at some point if you were to watch a true 8-hour movie, you're gonna have some parts that are gonna kind of be slower or whatever, and so you need to break that up. And I think that's a cool way to do it, is when you do it episodically. Now, okay, it doesn't seem to drag on for so long because, okay, you got one that's okay, this episode is a slow episode, but it's only 30 minutes. So it's easier for somebody to digest. And then the next episode may be really action packed, and now you need an hour to actually tell that.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that maybe with some, but to be honest, if you really think about even what we've gotten so far, I mean, with The Mandalorian, with the Book of Boba Fett, it's not like you couldn't make these things into 50 minutes, and sometimes you can use the opposite argument, that because they're only going to make a 28-minute episode, now you're rushing through some things that maybe you could take some more time on. And I could definitely give the same argument for the last couple episodes of the Book of Boba Fett. It's kind of like, don't get me wrong, I mean, I'm happy with what we got, but you could, it's not like if you added 10 minutes to it, it's going to hopelessly drag the thing out. There's a lot of story in there. That's part of the reason why Star Wars is such a great subject matter for a lot of these series. Because you can. That was one of the biggest problems that everybody's been having with the films. Is that, well, they're only 2 hours and 20 minutes. And, again, that's it's still a fairly decent sized film, but a lot of these Star Wars movies could easily be 3 hours long, and you wouldn't feel it. And The Rise of Skywalker is a perfect example of that, too, because they had to rush through the thing. And you don't...
The Batman movie is going to be that way, too.
Right. And that's probably why. Because they realize, first of all, the market will bear that. Back in the 80s, early 90s, when the average movie length was like 90 minutes, okay, yeah, but you get your movies like Malcolm X, Titanic, stuff like that, where, they're over 3 hours long. That was a really big deal back then. But not so much now. And I think that the streaming world has really opened that up too, because, people are used to
watching.
Well, first of all, you don't have to worry about run times in theaters, right? Because one of the reasons why they would always keep these run times shorter was in a theatrical situation, you want to be able to show the movie as many times as you can. Now, of course, they'll solve that by putting the same movie in, different
multiple theaters.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So if you have a theater that basically has 10 screens, you might dedicate 3 to one film. And then that way you can get more showtimes in. But obviously, if the movie's shorter, in that one screen, you can fit even more. But now with streaming, Netflix, all these guys making their own movies, like The Irishman, for instance, it's over 3 hours long. Doesn't matter. And same thing with series. Series, even the episodic ones, are still more like one big 5 to 10 hour film, more so than the typical episodic television that we're all used to. They tell one big story divided up into chunks versus the adventure of the week format. And so that's why I think that you could easily make each one of these shows 50, 55 minutes, and it wouldn't hurt it at all.
No, I mean, I don't disagree with that. I think what a lot of people, and like I said, even when people binge watch, I mean, look at us, you and I blew through season 4 of Cobra Kai in one day, right?
Yeah.
And that's like 10 episodes, and they're about 30-minute episodes each. So, so I think a lot of people, if it's interesting enough and you're telling a great story, you can always keep the people engaged. Yeah, sure, you could do that.
Every season of Cobra Kai, I generally watch 3 times.
Oh yeah.
Before the next one. So I mean, and that's true. If it's good, you'll watch it again. I mean, if that weren't true, then why would they sell these series on DVD like they used to, or Blu-ray or 4K now?
They still do, yeah.
Yeah, they still do. And bringing that into the Andor realm, you pretty much have a storyline here that's just begging for long episodes. Right? It's a spy thriller, basically. So what do you need to see in this series?
Definitely out the gate. Um, I love the fact that he uh, was a separatist, and so I want to see how he left that whole movement into joining up with the rebellion. How did the rebellion receive him? Because I'm sure there probably wasn't a whole lot of trust on that front, just receiving him into the fold. And
Mm-hmm.
then, um, but then the thing I really enjoyed about Rogue One, and you and I have talked about this before, was that we've always looked at Rogue One, and this is what I love about the current form of Star Wars, is that how they're showing what we call perspectives. And we've always looked at the rebellion as like, okay, they're the good guys, they're the heroes, and and they are. However, we see them as like these squeaky clean, almost like Luke Skywalker innocent kind of guys. Whereas in Rogue One, we actually saw them be a little dirty,
Yeah.
and that's kind of what I like to see. I want to see. It's like, okay, it's kind of like that cop, those cop shows like Chicago PD or something like that, where okay, we have to do this dirty thing, but it's for the greater good. But they kind of feel bad about how they had to do it, but it's like, look, we had to, otherwise, this person would get off or whatever. So I'm really interested to see how that's going to play off. Um, I want to see if they're going to mention Obi-Wan, and um, because this is taking place around the same time period. So I'm kind of curious as to see, because they even made mention in Rogue One. It's like, oh, what about your Jedi friend? So
Yeah, that's actually a good point. I didn't really think about that because of the fact that, it's really, I'm almost focused on when these things are going into production, but that's a good point. These things do take place during roughly the same time period. So why
mhm.
not,
And that's why I like the
maybe
fact that
we
they
see a
follow each
crossover.
other.
Yeah, maybe we see a crossover. Maybe we see some mentioning of, the characters, kind of like, yeah, your Jedi friend, like what we saw in Rogue One. By the way, while we're talking about what were our expectations, chat in your expectations. What do you guys need to see in Andor? And we'll get to those when, Daryl and I are finished yapping about ours. But these are all
So
really
yeah,
good, though. I mean, anything else you think that you either expect or want to see?
um, yeah, I want to see K2SO. I mean, of course, he's like everybody's little favorite droid. So I want to see how he was acquired, and how he kind of got assimilated into the whole rebellion thing, and just his bond and relationship with I'll say Diego, but that's the character, but with Cassian, and just kind of like where his state of mind is, and I do want to kind of see us. I really would just honestly just want to see the theme of a spy Star Wars thing. I mean, I think that's
Yeah.
really cool because it's something that we've never seen. So it's like, give
Kind of
me kind
that,
of like that Jason Bourne
yeah, that Mission
kind of.
Impossible or Ocean's 11 kind of
Yeah,
vibe, either like maybe the heist type of thing or, yeah, the whole like
exactly.
spy thriller, almost like James Bond meets Star Wars kind of thing. Absolutely.
Yeah.
For me, it's pretty much the same thing. The only thing that I would add to that is I don't necessarily think that I need to see a bunch of origin stuff. I don't. I mean, obviously, I think that Cassian being a separatist is something that's very important. I think it's really important for his character. So if they started doing some flashbacks a la the Book of Boba Fett, I'm pretty good with that. But
Hmm.
I don't. I mean, maybe if it
I
was a
want.
flashback, I can handle seeing K2SO being reprogrammed from an Imperial droid to like his buddy or whatever. But I don't know if I necessarily need to see that though. I mean, but then again, over 12 episodes that they're all 50 minutes long, I mean, it's not like they won't have time. But I don't know. I think for me, that's one of the things that I love about the current crop of superhero films is they don't necessarily need to go into the whole origin. I've said this a million times, how many times are they going to make a new Batman or new Superman movie? And every time that they recast the actor, we got to see the stupid origin again. It's like, is there anybody on this planet that really doesn't know the origin of Superman and Batman? I can,
Yeah, I mean,
you know what I mean? I
I
can
get you.
understand maybe
Yeah.
doing that like every 10 or 15 years, but come on, man.
Well, I think. See, I get, and once again, I think this depends on when this story actually takes place. Because is he already firmly cemented in the rebellion already, or is it just
Well, yeah,
joining the
okay.
rebellion?
Okay,
You
I'll
see what I'm
grant you
saying?
that. Yes, I will grant you that.
Because
It
if he's
depends on
just
how
joining,
far.
then yeah, yeah,
But
we need
maybe
to
that's
kind
what
of
I'm
see
saying. But
how
maybe
that.
that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. I'm saying I don't need to see it. I don't need to see him join the rebellion. I mean, we know he's in the
Mm-hmm.
rebellion. We've seen Rogue One. Give me more
Mm-hmm.
adventures. That's kind of where I think that I'm at with a lot of this stuff. I don't need to see it. Now, if you
Gotcha.
want to flash back, like maybe you have a particular scene where something reminds him of, when he joined up, and they want to do like a little 3 to 5 minute scene of him remembering when he joined up with the rebellion. Yeah, that's cool. And I mean, I'd be okay with that.
You just don't want to see half the season be dedicated to that.
Right.
Gotcha.
Because I mean, as much as I'm enjoying the flashback scenes in the Book of Boba Fett, and I didn't think that I would to the degree that I am, I'm on the it's like I'm almost at that edge where I find the current storyline more interesting, even though I think that the flashbacks really do help tremendously inform the current storyline. They strengthen it and kind of hold it up, and support it so much. Let me get to a couple of these chats here. So, all right, basically says, I don't have any expectations. I'm an open book. And that's that's probably
I mean,
the
and
best way to that's probably the best way
yeah,
to
I was about
be,
to say,
honestly.
yeah,
Um
because you don't want to set yourself up for failure.
well, yeah, and not to mention that you're a little bit more well, let me just get the second one in here by him before we talk about that. I don't know too much about that time era, so I'll pretty much like it all. And yeah, I think that because the thing is that when you read the comics too, you get a lot of that stuff sort of filled in,
Mm.
and the novels as well. And I'm talking about the new canon ones. I'm not talking about legend stuff. But I do think that, yeah, that is the healthiest way to go about it, honestly. And that's the way I've gone into the Book of Boba Fett. And honestly, I think that that's why I'm enjoying the series as much as I am, because I didn't attach all these, basically the weight. I didn't anchor the whole showdown with my expectations. And I think that ever since the sequel trilogy came out, heaven knows there's a lot of problems with it. But I think that's one of the reasons why I've been able to enjoy, to a large degree, everything that's been put out. Because I just kind of go into it with no expectations and take it in. And because I really enjoy the enrichment of the lore and the canon and all that stuff, I find it to be more fascinating. I'm not necessarily nitpicking it as a film or as a show. I'm looking at it as it's giving me new information about this universe I love so much. And so Ronaldo says, do you think they'll show how dark the rebellion can be? And of course,
That's what I'm
Bowright
hoping.
answers that and says, that'd be cool if they did. And then, of course, Ronaldo fires back, well, as long as the story's good, I'm okay with it. And I think on that he means, overall. But yeah, I think, Daryl, you kind of put a good spin on that. I think that we are going to see the seedier, darker side of the rebellion. How they have
Yeah.
to, you got to get it done, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know if we're going to see like in, sort of in a Rebel Alliance version of waterboarding or anything like that, but
I
who
mean, but
knows? You
yeah.
got to get that information somehow.
Hmm.
Hey, look at Saw Gerrera. Yeah, he's coming
Yeah.
back. We
Well,
know he's not above it.
yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like, I like to see that type of, because he always was, and his whole thing was, I'm willing to do what your rebellion is not.
That's right.
I'm willing to go that extra step and that extra, mile to really for my cause. We're fighting the same cause, but I'm willing to go a little bit further and do whatever's necessary while you guys are trying to keep your hands too clean. And I like that whole, because it's almost kind of like a Martin and Malcolm thing. It's kind of like they
Yeah.
both are fighting for the same cause. They just have different methodologies in doing it. And at times you can see how one can edge out the other, and you just have to see, how eventually it all plays out.
Well, and I think that this is necessary because, look, I could see both sides of this. I mean, on one hand, I don't always think that stories, particularly in the fantasy realm, have to mirror real life. I always get bothered when people say, well, this isn't realistic. This is too squeaky clean, or the hero's too... You know what? We need that. Maybe society is bad because we're trying to reflect it too much even in our entertainment. I mean, when I was young and you saw Luke Skywalker and you saw all this stuff, it was something to aspire to, And keep in mind, this is the 70s. Anybody who was alive in the 70s knows that was a pretty dark time, for the country and even the world to a degree. So it was nice to have that. The flip side of that, though, is that one of the things that's happening to Star Wars, because it's more stories and more stories and more stories, and you're kind of fleshing out the world. Well, now that you flesh out the world, you kind of do need to see all these sides. Because, if everybody was the knight in shining armor, it just, it wouldn't feel tangible or real. Whereas when you just had the original trilogy, you're kind of telling this fantasy story in these really broad strokes, right? And if they had left it at that, that would have been fine. But, you're starting to fill in the world and stuff like that. So, you're making the villains... Before, it was kind of more the hero's journey kind of thing, the black hats versus the white hats, the really bad villains and the really good guys. And now we're seeing, well, not all the villains, you're humanizing the Empire, you're dirtying up the rebellion a little bit, and let's face it, that's where the good storytelling comes from. When you're fleshing this stuff out, you can't really have a spy thriller kind of a thing and have it be too, the villains are just one-dimensional and so are the heroes.
Yeah, because even if you watch, like I said, and you and I both are huge James Bond fan.
Oh, absolutely.
Bond gets his hands dirty all the time. He's always having to, cross the line or do something, but he's got to get the job done, and it's...
Well, and and that's the thing.
Getting in bed with the enemy, or
yeah, and and this is true with all eras of Bond, right? But one of the things that I really appreciated about the later Bonds, the Brosnan one and the Daniel Craig one especially, is that unlike the Connery and Moore ones, which of course those are the untouchable ones, but Bond gets into a fight, his hair's messed up. That wasn't the case with with the Connery and the Moore ones. He'd get into this crazy fight. His shirt's still ultra tucked in and, suit still. And you're kind of like, okay, weren't you just up on a cable car?
Rooftop. Dangling for your life.
Yeah. Where especially in this, they did this to a degree with the Brosnan version, but really with the Daniel Craig version, man, he'd come out looking like he was just in a bar fight or something. And that's what you want to see. But, we'll see. And Ronaldo kind of goes in on that, and he says, look, it's a more realistic take on war. And that's a good point too, right? Because one of the things that Rogue One was doing was you had Star Wars, so it was less on the lore, more on the war. And Gareth Edwards wanted to make more of a kind of a Saving
Gritty.
Private Ryan, or some sort of a gritty war film, which he did very successfully, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things that was really cool that I really liked, because you're seeing the details. Like I said, the films were really more about the broad strokes, where when you have a series like this, and even Rogue One, because Rogue One was really isolated on one incident. Just how are we going to get the Death Star plans? Well, once they find out about it. And so they could get in a little bit on the details. And so I think that that's great, and I hope that we see more of that in the Andor series. And I think we
Definitely.
will. And as far as when it takes place, not the show. I mean, when the thing's actually released, I should say. I don't know. Do you think it's going to be more mid, or you think it's going to be more late? I personally think it's going to be more mid. I'm
Yeah, I'll
thinking
say mid, definitely.
July ish. I mean, you could be right. It could be. I remember you threw September out there,
Yeah, but I mean,
and
it could be like I said, it could be like late July. It could be like a late July, early,
August. Yeah,
August.
that would fit because
You
then it would
know,
wrap by like October,
yep,
November.
and then you have our next show, which is coming up, will be Mandalorian season 3.
Look at you go.
Hey man,
Yeah, the Mandalorian
perfect
season
segue.
3. So with the Mandalorian, yeah. So this is obviously they're thinking kind of a late 2022 release on this one.
Yeah, winter. So yeah, it's more likely, like I said, November, December
Well,
release.
that would be in line with what we had seen before, right? I mean, I
Yep.
think the first season debuted in like November or something, and the second season was
Mm-hmm.
like
It was December.
December. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, right. So kind of a October, November, December, somewhere in that fall, maybe winter. Because winter really doesn't start till the end of December. So what they could do is they could plug the Mandalorian season 3 kind of like a Book of Boba Fett thing where it comes out around the 29th or 30th or New Year's or something. But this is going to be a really critical one too. This is going to
Yeah.
be
This
um
is actually really critical
yeah, like
because you're
more so
following
than
up.
even 2. Yeah.
Yeah, because now you don't have the crutch, so to speak, of Grogu, aka Baby Yoda.
Well, maybe they do
Um,
though, because remember there's that one poster that showed Luke and Grogu on it. That was actually one of
well,
my biggest complaints.
well, I'm just saying, like him with the Mandalorian, like I mean,
Well, yeah, okay.
because see, if that was kind of like like I said, since day one, they've kind of been inseparable.
Mm-hmm.
Now he's gonna have to kind of carry the show like on his own. And even if we do see Luke and Grogu, in the scene or two, they can't spend too much time with them because it's not about them. It's about the Mandalorian. So you have to focus on Din, even though the whole world wants to know what happened to Grogu. But you have to get back to the Mandalorian. And because he has all this stuff now that he has to deal with, Moff Gideon, he's got to deal with Bo-Katan, he's got stuff on his plate. And then, Boba Fett still may show up because of everything. And, it was even kind of hinted in this week's episode that Mandalorian, then might be popping up even in Book of Boba Fett. We don't know. But, you know,
Yeah, it's
it's going to be interesting because this show is going because season 3 it can go you have to be careful because now you're taking the show almost like in a different direction. Not a different well, not necessarily a different direction, but you don't have the same characters because Cara Dune's gone by her own fault, and then like I said, Grogu's gone. So now you have to,
well, it depends though.
restructure some things.
Well, definitely a restructuring, but what they could do is they could do actually a pretty fairly widely whatever other thing I can think of. What other little synonym or whatever I can think of, but this is a widely used storytelling tactic that has been primarily a focus of George Lucas's stuff, and that is they kind of start out right and then they split off and then you focus on each of the individual adventures.
Hmm.
I mean, if you really think about it, because everybody talks about Han, Luke, and Leia, but if you really think about other than A New Hope, really in Return of the Jedi and in Empire Strikes Back, it was really splitting off. It was really the Han, Leia, Chewie, 3PO versus Luke, R2, and, whatever he's doing. If you're talking about just like the good guys, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they could do a similar thing. Because the other thing you got to look at, too, is you have to look at a lot of the peripheral news stories that have been coming out. Like, for instance, there's been a thing about, they might have a Bo-Katan series now. That's been gaining a lot of traction. And so it's something that we had talked about early on. I think towards the end of season 1, early season 2 of The Mandalorian, one of our speculation-based discussions was, is The Mandalorian going to be the flagship show upon which they just start launching all these, spin-off series?
Mm-hmm.
And it's starting to look that way. You had the Ahsoka series, which we'll get to. We don't actually have like a slide or a graphic or anything for that. That's going to be kind of like an outside discussion. We're going to wrap it up with the Ahsoka series. Just spoiler alert, But basically, you introduced Ahsoka in live action, The Mandalorian. Now she gets her own thing. You basically all had the Bo-Katan thing. Cara Dune, before Gina Carano was doing her tweeting, she was going to be the main character in Rangers of the New Republic. So you have a lot of stuff here that's going on. So the question becomes, well, what's left to tell in The Mandalorian? Because if they do a Bo-Katan spinoff series, that whole Darksaber,
Mandalore.
Yeah, the whole Mandalore thing. That could actually end up being its own thing. Now, this goes into something that Ronaldo's asking. He's saying, hey, do you think we'll see Luke again? And
I think it's a possibility. I think we'll probably
definitely
see him.
Well, once that poster came out, I didn't actually think it was a possibility until then.
Well, I think I think they're definitely gonna, because of course people are gonna want to see Grogu, and of course everybody definitely wants to see like Luke. But I think we're gonna get them in, like you said, Eric, probably like, okay, on the other side of the galaxy, this is what they're doing really quick, and then but it pops back. But I think what's gonna happen. Well, here's what my expectations for season 3. I'm really curious because there's a lot of different pieces that could, happen here. But one of the main ones is Gideon. I think he's going to be one of the focal points because, you and I, we've often asked the question, is he really the one that's pulling the strings or is it someone else? Now, Ahsoka asked about Thrawn. So we know Thrawn is around. The question is, does he have an alliance, or is he in cahoots with Gideon? Now, if they are teamed up with each other, that could present a whole wealth of stuff.
Well, let me answer that part of it because, obviously I want to hear the rest of what you're going to say, but I want to stop you there for a second because it's going to depend on one thing and one thing only. We know this is taking place 6 years-ish after Return of the Jedi. So the Empire is kind of split off into factions. It hasn't been yet unified under one leader. Now, that could be what Thrawn's doing. Because we know in the Legends series, the whole thing that kicked everything off, Thrawn was the one that took up the mantle from Palpatine, basically took all of the, because like Paleon, who was, his right-hand man in the new canon is Eli, but pretty much in the old canon, it was Captain Paleon. And Paleon basically was kind of like his own thing, because what happened is a lot of these admirals, captains, and all that stuff kind of had their own little clans almost, like they had their own little, kind of like Werner Herzog's character in The Mandalorian, right? They kind of broke off into all these splinter groups. And then it's up to somebody to bring all that together under one rule again. Now, in Legends, it was Thrawn. Basically, what's been happening in the new canon is you get Captain Ray Sloane. I think she ends up being like Admiral. And she's kind of together with Hux's father. They start to kind of rein things in, and you start to see the seeds of the First Order. But Thrawn is definitely there. So it really depends on what they want to do. Is Thrawn kind of overall bringing the Empire during this time period under one rule, in which case Gideon would be answering to him? But see, the other possibility is maybe Thrawn hasn't completed that task yet, so you still have all these factions, and Moff Gideon, being as powerful of a leader as he is, might have his own little splinter group of the Empire that might not have anything to do with what Thrawn or any of those other guys are doing because they haven't brought it under one cohesive rule yet. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I know that, and that's what I'm saying. Like, that's why I say it has those possibilities in there because, yeah, we don't know really what they're going to do, and of course, we know pretty much Thrawn is coming. We just don't know if he's going to be in Mandalorian or is he going to be popping up in the Ahsoka series or both, because we could have transmissions or what do you call them? Not the
like a crossover kind of a thing. You might have.
Well,
pretty
yeah,
much
I'm saying, like, they might have like one of those things where I can't even think of their name, but when that little 3D visual thing pops up.
Oh, the holograph? Holograms?
Holograms, yeah. So, like, you might have a hologram of Thrawn, talking to Gideon, or something like that, but we don't really see him.
Yeah,
but
that could be
that's
too.
who he's talking to,
right? Like maybe
it's like,
maybe
we
in
don't see him
Ahsoka
into action.
Right,
that's when we actually see him.
Well,
right.
It should be noted though. It's like a little sneak preview. Some of the Ahsoka news we have. Ahsoka takes place 5 years after Return of the Jedi, so it sounds like it's a prequel of The Mandalorian. I mean, not literally, but it takes place before The Mandalorian.
Before The Mandalorian. Right.
So...
yeah, I mean...
That's kind of weird to me. Because that makes me... It's almost like... You can't really have Thrawn in there, if that's the case. If it truly takes place beforehand. I mean, I guess you could, unless Ahsoka doesn't meet up with him. Or maybe she has met up with him, and then by the time the Mandalorian pops up, she's looking for him again. I mean, you know what I mean? It just depends on how they want to handle that. I really don't know how they're going to handle that.
Yeah.
So there's really a big question mark on season 3. So, yeah, I mean, I'm kind of right there with you on expectation-wise what we think we might see. The question becomes, though, and this is true for anybody in the chat as well. We want to hear you guys' things while we're talking about this. Go ahead and chat it in so we can discuss it with you guys. But what do you want to see in season 3 of The Mandalorian?
All right.
Dead air. No, I'm asking you.
I thought you were talking to
No,
them.
I was. I mean, but while they're, I'm just trying to give them a chance to chat in, especially because we're talking about multiple shows. I'm trying to set that up so they can chat. But in the meantime, you and I talk about it while they're doing it.
Well, yeah, what do I want to see for season 3? Of course, I want to see what
I thought maybe you just didn't know. You're just like, I don't know.
Like, next.
You're right. Well, our next show is...
Tune in on Monday where we talk about Boba.
Exactly, right. Yes, we'll reveal it on Monday's show for the Book of Boba Fett, episode 4.
No, I think for Mandalorian, what do I want to see? I definitely want to see this how they resolve, of course, the whole Darksaber situation between the two of them. Are they going to fight? Are they not? And that's what I mean by that is between Din and Bo-Katan.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the
100%.
results of what's going to happen with Gideon. Somehow I feel like he's going to get away, and now he's got this whole thing. But now that he's lost the child because Lucas got him, like, is he going to go after Luke, which would be a very bad thing, which I don't think he would do. I think he'll kind of turn his attention towards Mandalore.
Mhm.
Yeah, because you saw the way he looked at that screen. It's like, oh heck no.
Yeah, there's no way he's gonna go
You know,
seek him out.
but I think, um, I think he's going to be more invested in what Bo-Katan's doing, because I think he's going to start to see that, like, okay, there might be more Mandalorians out there, and that could be a problem for him. And I think he may be trying to put an end to that whole faction. And I think that's kind of where I'm hoping to see. Would it be cool to see more Luke and Grogu? Absolutely. Who wouldn't want to see that? But if it doesn't happen, I wouldn't necessarily be mad, because, like I said, the show is called The Mandalorian. But um, yeah, I think that's pretty much it
Well, I'm
for
gonna
me
jump on some of your
as far as
stuff
characters.
because what you just said is really good for a foundation of what I was thinking too. The only thing I would add to that is I would like to see the whole Mandalore Darksaber thing wrapped up as far as Din is concerned, because I think the strategy they're following, if this is true, it's a very intelligent decision on Lucasfilm's part. I think what they're trying to do is not try to cram too many storylines in The Mandalorian. I think they're trying to streamline it, which is why I think that they're giving Bo-Katan her own show. Because if you were to try to cram the whole like Mandalore thing, it starts to convolute the whole point of the show, which was you had this lone gunman kind of character going through, running into different adventures, and kind of a Western kind of a vibe.
Well, actually, I wouldn't mind that though.
Well, but you might see that in the Bo-Katan series, though. See, so if they wrapped it
I don't
up,
think she needs one though. That's my point.
well,
Like, I
you,
think it should stay here in Mandalorian. Honestly,
I don't, because I think that it could tie too much up, and the evidence that I would use for that is the Clone Wars. Look at how much of the Clone Wars they spent on the whole Mandalore thing, and I'm talking about only the Mandalore thing. You could easily base another entire series on recapturing or doing whatever it is. Especially if Maul's still running around with Crimson Dawn. Because
we'll see that. Go ahead. My fault.
well, I mean, I was just gonna say, I'll just wrap this part up because I'm curious on what you were about to say. Actually, I was just gonna say that with them also floating around the idea of a Kira series. See, I think that they're doing this strategically in order to pretty much the way they handled the War of the Bounty Hunter comic. You had the full War of the Bounty Hunter comic, but then in each of the individual comics, they had overlapping stories, right? So you would see things that happen in War of the Bounty Hunters in the Vader comic, let's say, but from a slightly different point of view. And then you also had a continuation of Vader's role in it, or all these other interactions. And it was really cool how they did it. And they could do the same thing in these series, to where, say, the whole Mandalore thing could be told in all the series, right? So in The Mandalorian, you have what Din's part of it is, but then he's also doing whatever else he's doing. And then Bo-Katan is maybe where it could mostly reside, because she's the one that has the biggest investment in it. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, but see, for me, I think
Yeah, but see, you're wrong. It's like, yeah, I understand what you're saying, but you're just way off base.
poppycock, not a swing, but
Exactly. Well, that's a bunch of bull.
yes, hogwash.
Exactly.
But no, I think
poppycock.
no, but I think I think the Mandalorian, because once again, it's called the Mandalorian, and if you really think about, like, his whole journey is like, okay, he was this kid, he was a foundling. Okay, he kind of was following this kind of like this weird offshoot group of Mandalorians, and so there's kind of like that whole uh segregation, if you will, between true Mandalorians and people who are, kind of picked up the mantle, so to speak.
All right. So, yeah,
So
from that standpoint, I get it. It's kind of like he's sort of learning what it means to be a real Mandalorian kind of thing.
Well, sort of. I think because now you have someone who's a true Mandalorian in Bo-Katan, but then you
Mm-hmm.
have someone who's like who's kind of following this whole subculture, I guess, of Mandalorians. But if they actually combine together, because remember they had that whole cave with the person with the armorer, and she was making all the
Oh well, yeah,
the
right.
weapons and stuff.
The other Mandalorians,
Yeah,
but
the
they
other
were all kind
Mandalorian.
of
So that's
following that too. I
yeah,
think.
they were all following the same thing that Din was doing because they were all kind
Mm-hmm.
of in that same culture. But then you got somebody like, of course, Boba Fett. He pops up and he's like, okay, well, okay, are
All
you
y'all are
Mandal?
nuts.
Exactly. So, and he's like, why would you guys want to bring back Mandalore? See, they're trying to restart Mandalore. See, that would make more sense because I could see him try. Because you got to think about it. He's only doing this bounty hunter thing probably because he has no purpose. I mean, because there's nothing left because everything got
And I was
destroyed by
gonna
the
say
Empire.
that one of the things that you're talking about is there's almost a danger of the Mandalorian series being pointless if it's just random. It's almost like this
Yeah,
is giving it a little bit of weight and like a purpose. And I mean, I could see
exactly.
that, but I guess what I'm trying to say though, because it's kind of along the same lines. The only difference is that the whole Mandalore thing and all that. Yeah, he could be learning that because I think it can happen again, overlapping. That some of the stuff could be covered in the Mandalorian, some of the stuff is covered in the Bo-Katan series. It just depends on what the focus is on a particular storyline or mission. It would almost be like if they took the Clone Wars and you had a spin-off series, one that was focused more on the adventures of Obi-Wan and Anakin, one that was kind of dealing with the overall story arc, which would be the Clone Wars, one that maybe was like the Bad Batch, like if they had focused on them during that. You know what I mean? It's like, and then you just, instead of trying to cram everything, because how often do we complain about the Clone Wars when they would have all these sort of minor storylines? I mean, the droid
Hmm.
one is not a good example because that was just completely pointless on all levels.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there are some other ones, though, because by the time that they had Bo-Katan and all that stuff, and Satine and all that, and, her whole thing with Obi-Wan, but then you also had a lot of the plotting of Palpatine and him, kind of wooing Anakin, and then you had a lot of stuff where it's just like, what do you focus on? And sometimes they would focus on a particular storyline for a while, and as good as it was, you're kind of like, okay, this whole Mandalore thing, with Maul kind of taking it from the Watchers or whatever they were called, and all this stuff is interesting. I kind of want to see what Obi-Wan and Anakin are doing now. But you also had this whole
Hmm.
thing with the, them learning about the Force, and you had the father and the son and, the brother, sister, that whole thing. And you just had a lot of stuff. And it's kind of like, okay, if you could have broken that up and focused on those in individual series, it might have better served
Well,
things.
yeah, but I think when you take something like the Clone Wars, I mean, yeah, that's a vast thing anyway because it's a whole war that's going on. So of course, like you know, there's things going on all over the place.
Hmm.
It's not just the Jedi, but you got the troopers. You got yeah, you got everybody's affected, and that's one of the things that I talked about how we always said like we love seeing how the war affected all these different types of people.
Right.
With Mandalorian, though, I think that this is a chance to world build because one, people love bounty hunters, like, and they look cool, right? I mean, and it's Boba Fett, Black Chrysanthemum, like people are kind of getting into really the whole bounty hunter thing. I think and everybody knows about well, most fans really know about Mandalorians and Mandalore and everything like that. So I think this is a chance for them to really build a world. So now you can almost, like I said, Mandalorian can become its own thing, almost kind of like how Book of Boba Fett, because now I think he's going to have to learn how to kind of
But you're almost
work
proving my
with.
point, though. Because imagine if they had tried to cram the Book of Boba Fett storyline in The Mandalorian. See, they were smart. Because he was in The Mandalorian. They could have easily have made season 3 of The Mandalorian the Book of Boba Fett, with Din appearing in it every once in a while. But they didn't.
But no, because that's because Boba Fett is too huge of a character, though.
They all
Everybody
are.
knows, so it's gonna. But Bo-Katan isn't though. That's what I'm saying. Like if you create a Bo-Katan story, I mean, don't
Bo-Katan
get
was
me wrong. Like
pretty major in the whole thing.
yeah, but I mean, but I'm saying like most people don't like. If you look at the casual fan, wouldn't know who Bo-Katan was until
Oh,
the
for that
show.
matter, the casual fan didn't know who Ahsoka was either. There's so many people that when Ahsoka made her live action debut, nobody knew. When Thrawn made his debut in the thing, the
Exactly.
casual fan doesn't know. So the thing is that that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to split these things off into these different series. And again, I think that what they are going to do, at least it seems
I don't
that
think
way.
Bo-Katan isn't as. I put it to you this way: Bo-Katan isn't as interesting as Ahsoka.
No, but when you actually factor in the fact that Sabine will be around, probably in that too, I'm sure that's going to overlap. I mean, I know that they're kind of casting her for Ahsoka, but I have no doubt in my mind that she pops up and if they do a Bo-Katan series, again, I mean, that's kind of, I would call that softly confirmed. It's one of those things
See,
that
like,
there's no
see the reason,
Bo-Katan logo yet, I mean,
right? But see, that's the thing. So, like, okay, you talk about this Kira series, right? Now,
yep.
most people, once again, at least Kira's already been established in
Mm-hmm.
Solo.
Right.
But the whole thing is, the whole Crimson Dawn thing is behind her. It's not just her; it's her and Crimson Dawn,
Well, but you can
and
say
her
that about
whole.
Bo-Katan too. The whole Mandalorian thing is behind her.
Yeah, but Bo-Katan is not one of those characters that people really are like, "Oh, I want to see more about Bo-Katan." But if you do it in Mandalorian, who you've already established, it's already a successful show. Like you could bring everybody, kind of like I said, everybody can come into Mandalorian, or if they already are in there, and it's already established. Like and you already have the platform for it because of his story.
Well, you
That's what
can.
I'm saying. Like,
What's going to be interesting is, and again, I think a lot of this discussion, which is the reason why, with us speculating about it, we don't really know. See, the
mhm.
fact that they're even entertaining the idea of a Bo-Katan series coming out informs me of the direction they're probably taking the Mandalorian, because it probably means that they feel that whatever story it is they want to tell on the Mandalore side might be too big to just cram into the Mandalorian. Because otherwise, normally
But
I would agree. Because I actually, if you remember, I actually said my hope for season 3 of The Mandalorian was going to be the whole Mandalore Bo-Katan storyline.
I just wonder, like, okay, well, if you're gonna take that whole Mandalore thing away from the Mandalorian, then what? And Grogu's already gone. Like, what do you? I mean, what is he? Like I said, I just feel like he's just gonna be aimlessly walking around, just
Well, and
collecting
I don't
bounties,
know. I
and
don't know. I mean, and that's why I say that what they could do is they could split it off, right? Like you have, it's almost like, in a way, it's going to be kind of like what they were thinking of doing with Ahsoka, with Rangers of the New Republic. All this stuff is going to be overlapping The Mandalorian. Book of Boba Fett, too. In fact, one of the things, I don't think I actually mentioned this, what seems like days ago when we started talking about all this stuff, but with the Book of Boba Fett, what I'm hoping they do is that okay, so season 1's done, right? Well, I mean, when it is.
I was, yeah.
I hope that The Mandalorian season 3 brings Boba Fett back in, and now we're seeing Boba kind of after the events of the Book of Boba Fett. And then after Mandalorian season 3, now you have the Book of Boba Fett season 2, which would be after the events or maybe during or however they want to do it, maybe overlapping the events of season 3 of The Mandalorian. So it's almost like, you introduce the character in season 2 of The Mandalorian. Well, I mean, reintroduce him. Okay, now you spin off his thing and tell more of his story, and then, it's kind of leapfrogging. And that's kind of like what they're doing with Ahsoka, too. She started out in season 2 of The Mandalorian, and now she gets her series, which is going to focus on whatever her focus is, and maybe she pops back up. Let's get to some of these chats, though, too. I want to bring these guys into it a little bit. So, obviously.
You already did that one.
Yeah, we did that one. But I wanted to bring that back because it goes into what we were talking about. And it also comes to our next thing, too. So do we think we'll see Luke again? Maybe. It really depends on if they want to put this whole Luke Grogu thing into season 3 or not. I mean, I don't think we're going to get a spinoff, though. Boatwright says, I think it would be cool to see more Cobb Vanth. That's a good point. I think that's a character they could make grow into something special. And then, of course, let me just get through these because they're all kind of related. Then Ronaldo answers, maybe we'll see Cobb Vanth in an upcoming Boba Fett episodes, which I think is where it would pretty much be more relevant. I think that Cobb Vanth is really more relevant to Boba Fett's storyline than Din's storyline. But then, of course, Boatwright comes back with, it seems to be a waste to use a character with so much potential for one episode. And I agree, but again, I think that definitely them bringing in Cobb Vanth was not an accident. This wasn't a one and done kind of a thing. I do think, though, and I think we're in agreement on this, that Cobb is definitely more relevant to Boba Fett and his storyline than The Mandalorian. Once again, The Mandalorian seems to be the flagship show, right? That's going to be, I think, kind of the main timeline. Things are going to relate to The Mandalorian. Well, okay, you'll have a series. Say Ahsoka. Say it's like Ahsoka season 3. It's like, well, wait a minute. Does that take place before season 5 of the Mandalorian? It's that kind of thing. And I definitely think the Cobb Vanth, you're going to see a lot of stuff. Maybe not in season 1. We'll have to see. Because, and we'll talk about this probably in our Monday show with the review of season 4. Or season 4. Episode 4.
Episode 4.
Yeah. So Ronaldo says the droid story arc is George's favorite. Of course it is. Kind of like Jar Jar is his favorite character.
Because he's goofy like that.
He's goofy like that, and that's, that's... Just keep in mind, he did create Vader and all these other guys, so he gets kind of a free pass. Ronaldo also says, I really want to know what happens to all these characters in the sequels. So are you talking about like Rey and Finn and all those guys?
Well, that's the trilogy he's speaking of, but I think he's talking about like what happens to Din and Bo-Katan and all these folks by the time the sequels arrive.
Oh, yeah. No, that's a good point. That is what he means. Yeah. But keep in mind, there's like 24 years in between that. In between The Mandalorian, I'm not really sure how much time is transpiring between season 1 and 2. But we know that season 1 takes place like 6 or 7 years after Return of the Jedi. So there's a lot of time. But I agree. It would be interesting to see, is anybody still around? I mean, we don't know. All right. So our last, well, not really our last, because we will be talking about Ahsoka, but we gotta focus a little bit on the animated shows now. We had the Bad Batch season 2. Now, the release date for this one is really crazy because so far officially it's just coming sometime in 2022. So,
and it may be a summer thing. This may be a summer show.
I'm actually surprised that it's not coming out. When did the first season come out? Because it was supposed to be January, and then they kept pushing it. And I thought it was like the end of February that it finally actually debuted.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, and we know the Book of Boba Fett ends on February 9th, I see no reason why the Bad Batch couldn't just be released at the end of February like it was last year.
And it very well might be.
Well, the only reason why I'm not sure is because we haven't. Did they release a trailer yet? I don't remember seeing a trailer. Seems to me like we would have
Mm-mm.
put it on our show if they had.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So yeah, there hasn't been a trailer. I'm not sure. I mean, I'm assuming that they're finished doing it, but the Bad Batch is a really interesting show because of where we left everything, and I mean, I don't know. What are you thinking for season 2?
Well, definitely for me, what I need to see is what's going to become of Hunter. Last we saw him, he ended up in Imperial custody,
Right.
and then so they got to get him back, and then we still kind of like uh, what's his name? I keep calling him want to call him Long Shot, but that's not his name.
Crosshair.
Crosshair.
Yeah,
Crosshair.
didn't he get his chip out? But then he was all like, "No, it wasn't the chip that made me this way," or something like that.
Yeah, he was still kind of like the jerk basically.
Yeah,
And
he's kind of like, "No, man, I'm following the Empire because it's just what I think we should be doing."
Yeah, it's like I actually agree with him.
Yeah, I agree with this. It has nothing to do with the chip.
We
Which I thought was hilarious.
They left him on that platform.
Mm-hmm.
So,
which he was rescued.
He kind of, he was rescued, but they eventually let him. He let the other guys escape. So, that was kind of like his thing for like, all right, you guys saved my life. I'll let you guys, go run off with.
Yeah, I'll kind of do you guys a solid, and
yeah, run off with your kid. Which brings me to Omega because I really want to see her growth now between season 1 and 2.
Yeah,
and I want to see how much time has passed.
That's a big one for me. I was gonna say, I mean, I'm really hoping that. I mean, they can't have too much time passing just because they left a couple of cliffhangers up there. But I would like to see a decent amount of time passing. Like, I don't want another Force Awakens Last Jedi where it kind of picks up right from the last scene.
Yeah, I could see like maybe 1 or 2 years. Afterwards.
Yeah, that wouldn't be bad.
But I would like to see her growth as far as her and her seeing her showcase her abilities a little bit more. We know that now her abilities are like she's like a master strategist almost.
Mm-hmm.
So I really would love to see that cultivated in her relationship with Sid.
Yeah, that was developing. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, these are a lot of the things I'd like to see. And unlike a lot of the other shows, I think that this is really where they are going to go. I don't necessarily think there's going to be too much of a discrepancy between what we want to see and what we're going to see or expect to see. I don't know. It's going to be interesting. Let's so when we pick it up here, we got Ronaldo saying, kind of going back to his other one, I just hope Kylo doesn't kill Grogu. I don't think that's going to be a thing.
Kylo's probably not even born yet.
Yeah, well, I mean, he technically is. Because in the last shot, he's basically like a little kid. I mean, he's actually born around 3, 4 years, 5 years. Like, he's either born just before the Mandalorian or kind of like right during that time period. We'll have to see. Ronaldo says, I'll guess that Crosshair dies this season. That could be. I could see that. That's a possibility. Only because they're setting it up, and I can almost see that whole Star Wars, he kind of has that moment of being good and sacrifices himself, that kind of thing. But Boatwright says maybe Hunter will die, and that will bring Crosshair back to the group. He's kind of like, who knows? Dwight comes in and says it didn't end with Hunter in custody. He was there when Kamino was destroyed. I honestly don't remember.
No,
it's like, you know what? You and Daryl can fight about this one because I kind of like, I remember the whole destruction of Kamino thing. I could have sworn though that there was that scene where
Yeah,
Hunter
they
was
had that.
taken and he was like kind of in a cell, and then Crosshair, and they had that conversation.
They were trying to escape out of that one stronghold or whatever, and then they because that's when they noticed that the troopers were different,
Mm-hmm.
and they were running through that jungle or whatever. Hunter went back to save somebody, and then he ended up getting he jumped, or ended up shooting him down or something like that, and he got hurt and was knocked out, and they took him into custody, and Omega was trying to go back after him.
Right, because it was
And
kind of
then
like,
that
we
ended
don't leave anybody behind, and they're like, hey, listen, you gotta cut
right.
your losses, and that kind of thing. That's how I remember
Yeah,
it
we gotta
too.
like regroup. Yeah.
But we'll see. But Dwight goes on to ask a question. He says, you think Echo will have a bigger role this time around? He's kind of a background member in season 1. And yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
And I think that was by design, because remember, Echo was a more established clone.
Yeah,
He started
he was
joining
an
the Bad Batch
original
by default. He was an actual original, just
trooper.
yeah. And he got hooked up with the Bad Batch because he got messed up in the head. And they kind of rescued him and brought him back. So I think that, yes, he probably will have a bigger thing, because if Filoni didn't have that planned, he could have just written a scene where, maybe they kind of helped Echo and then sent him on his way. The fact that he's with the group, I think what's going to happen is you're going to see he'll play a bigger role in season 2. I think with season 1, they were trying to build up and establish the main group of characters, because we know we have some background on Echo.
Yeah.
Okay, so then Dwight says, remember, use Hunter to lure in the rest of the batch to Camino. See, we're going to have to risk a copyright strike and throw up the actual episode and do a reaction video to the season finale.
Dwight might be right, though.
Mm-hmm.
He may be correct.
Dwight does rhyme with right, so.
Please don't give him nothing else.
Amen.
No. The last thing we need is Dwight having another reason why he's right.
Well, it's kind of like, I'm thankful for people like Dwight, Ronaldo, but like everybody really, because a lot of times it's true, there's times where we maybe don't exactly remember something right, or it's great, because Ronaldo, especially because he's with us almost like every week, twice a week, flawlessly. A lot of times he's kind of like our encyclopedia. Anytime we forget a character or we don't know, it's like, what was that again? And, sure enough, he chats it in and reminds us.
He's like a 3PO.
Yes. So it's good that you guys are all chatting tonight and keeping us honest with this stuff, because, again, it's kind of a discussion thing, right? We're not like some sort of news show where we're, trying to dispense all of our wisdom, and, because a lot of the Star Wars shows are like that, where it's kind of like people tune in because, you get these like crazy, super geeky fans that, know every little thing about it and stuff like that. But with us, it's kind of more resembling the way that a bunch of Star Wars fans get together and we're just talking about it. That's kind of how it is. So, sometimes I admit, as much of the stuff, like I said, I've been into this thing since 77, so been there since the beginning, and I've read quite a bit of the Legends books, a lot of the comics, all that stuff, but man, there's just so much to keep track of now. Star Wars used to be so much easier. It's...
Yeah, you only had the films, that was it.
Well, and even when you had Legends, right, but even when you had all that stuff, it wasn't technically canon. Unless Lucas said it was. So all you really had to do was keep track of everything that Lucas said was canonized and legitimate. And then you were good. Now it's like there's so much stuff. So it's kind of crazy. But again,
yeah,
no, go ahead.
No, you go.
Oh, you go. Well, I was going to say was, I mean, I think with the Bad Batch, it's going to be, again, I think this is going to be, I don't necessarily think this is a pivotal season for the show. It's not really, I think that this is more like how season 2 of The Mandalorian is. All we need to do is we need another really good season of the show to further establish the characters, move the story along, just tell a bunch of really good stories, give us something compelling, and I think we're on board for it. Plus, I will say that the animated shows don't seem to have as much scrutiny as what the live action shows do. And that's because the live action shows are starting to resemble the films a little bit more. With animation, there's almost like a separate audience for that.
Well, it's automatically kind of deemed like childlike, so you kind of forgive a lot of stuff.
Sure.
More or less than something that's live action.
Yeah. Because, another thing that we didn't mention, which I'm sure isn't going to hurt your feelings any, but,
oh, boy, I already know you're going with this.
We do expect to see... We do expect...
Thanks, folks. It's been great seeing you guys tonight.
Yeah, right. We do expect to see season 2 of Visions come out at some point, which...
Y'all know Ronaldo's going to be chomping at the bit for this.
Well, I mean, the thing that's going to be hilarious is the fact that, I mean, once they do it, and then we have to actually review it, it's like, well, here we go. We'll eat our broccoli with our dessert, But I have to say, I have a softer spot for Visions now, even though it's still not exactly ranking as one of my favorites. But there are some of the episodes that are rewatchable. But of all the big ones, the only one that we didn't really cover in all this stuff, which of course I have to put this up here just so you can see it. Hey man, Ronaldo, that your reward from Daryl for being such a loyal viewer is the fact that we've committed to and will continue to review that show.
I didn't sign any documentation.
That is our gift to you. Our gift to you is we will review season 2. But again, like I was saying, one of the only shows that is slated to come out in 2022, maybe. That's the only reason why I left it off. But it may come out sooner than expected. There was another separate story that came out, I don't know what, yesterday, today, somewhere in there. I mean, it was really recent, right? About Ahsoka actually starting to shoot sooner than what they expected. Yeah. And so the other thing that I really wanted to cover here is that Mary Elizabeth Winstead now has signed on. Now, I believe she played Huntress in the oh man, I keep wanting to say Birds of Prey. I mean, that's part of it. The whole Harley Quinn. I can't believe I blanked out on that. Basically the Harley Quinn movie. She played Huntress in that. And we're not really sure what she's playing in the Ahsoka series. They already signed on I can't remember her name now. Whoever the actress.
Dawson.
I know that. No, who's the one that was playing Sabine?
Oh, that was the she had that difficult name.
Yeah. So I'm not even going to attempt it. But the point is, they have actually really started casting, and now they've, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, they've just added her. So, I mean, they're really moving forward with the whole Ahsoka series. The other thing that's interesting about Ahsoka that I keep forgetting is that Hayden Christensen is in that one too. So we already know Hayden Christensen signed on to be on Obi-Wan. Now he's coming on to Ahsoka. So, and of course it's got to be flashback, Force Ghost, something. So that's going to be really interesting.
So Ahsoka will be, not Ahsoka. Sabine will be played by Natasha Liu Bordizio.
All right, you attempted it. Very good. So
Yes.
yeah, I mean,
And then
they cast Sabine, but again, the Hayden Christensen thing is really interesting to me because he starts out where there was some blowback from the whole prequel trilogy, right? Then he kind of comes back to the conventions and all that, and everybody welcomes him. Well, now he's like all over this whole Disney Plus thing. I mean, he's popping up, first Obi-Wan, now he's in Ahsoka. So it almost sounds like if they need an Anakin Vader angle to their story, he's going to be there to do it. So that's going to be real interesting. So the whole Ahsoka series is really shaping up to be a very curious, interesting thing. Now, I've noticed there were rumors that they had cast somebody to play Thrawn, but there's been no official... Because, even when they'll say, like, okay, like in the case of Mary Elizabeth Winstead, right? It's kind of like, okay, well, they cast her, but we don't know who she's playing. There's no plot details, character details, or anything like that. We just know she's been cast. But there's been no, that I know of, there's been no male lead actor or anything like that that's been cast where you can go, oh, that's got to be who's playing Thrawn.
yeah, unfortunately, but fortunately, Ahsoka's going to be starting to shoot this month, actually.
Interesting. So that really makes me wonder then when that's going to premiere. Now, Ronaldo brings up a good point too. He says, correct me if I'm wrong, but The Acolyte is coming out in 2023. Yes, I think that the last thing that we read about it or covered on it was the fact that, yes, it was going to be 2023. 2022 would be a little bit too quick. I believe that the last official thing I read was 2023, which it makes sense. And that I'm really looking forward to because, again, it's covering the end of the High Republic era. So that's going to be interesting. Now Darren says, what we really need in all these series is a Chopper appearance. Do not forget, my friend, that technically Chopper was in Rogue One.
Mm-hmm.
He rolled by. So he was in Rogue One. And actually...
he wants Chopper to have his...
well, to be honest, right, the Chopper... Star Wars series.
That's the droid. See, that's the droid story we're going to get is Chopper.
Yeah, right. And then, of course, Dwight follows that up by saying, Chopper, the serial killing droid. Because, yeah, he's... And honestly... yeah. I would love to see Chopper featured in some of these type of things. So Darren goes on to say, yeah, he was in Rogue One, but it didn't have any of his signature sass. And that's true. I mean, it was really more like a brief cameo appearance or whatever. It wasn't really, truly, I guess, like featured. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't mind seeing Chopper the way we saw K2SO or, any of these other things. And again, Chopper's a fan favorite character. You could easily put him in... well, you could put him in the Ahsoka series because you'll have Sabine there. And that kind of ties in. You could even put him in... if they do the Rangers of the New Republic, or Rangers of the Republic, and if they do what they said...
because they're supposed to have Hera in that, right?
Exactly. That's exactly where I'm going with it. They're supposed to have Hera in it. If they have Hera in it, because Chopper was mostly hers, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, because now, yeah, it was always Chopper, Zeb.
Yeah, well, if you... because, like, R2 is mostly Luke's. Right. Chopper, I think, was mostly Hera, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah.
Darren's like, yeah, second highest official body count. And then Bo Wright says, I love me some Chopper. And then Ronaldo is like, Chopper versus Mr. Bones, Battle of the Century. See, that's... there you go.
There you go.
There you go. See, now we know we got some true Star Wars fans on this chat, because...
yeah, Chopper doesn't play.
By the way, just saying, there's like 6 people that have been watching this tonight, but I only see 2 likes on our videos so far, so I'm expecting to see another 4, guys. Hit that like button. Come on. You can do it. So then Ronaldo says, wasn't Rangers canceled?
It was kind of postponed. It was more or less
Well,
kind of like
it was
it
canceled,
was canceled.
but they keep going back on it though. So first it was postponed, like you said, and then there was a whole thing where they were going to get Hera to be the lead instead of Kara.
Mhm.
But then it turned into this whole, now they're just going to cancel the whole thing. But then, didn't you send me some at one point or something like that now they're thinking of actually resurrecting the show?
Well, that might have been that or the whole
Rogue Squadron?
Rogue Squadron, yeah.
I don't know, man. I
'Cause I
thought
remember
I
that was
read something though. I thought I read something. Maybe it's because
well, like I said, with so much news coming out all the time, I mean, it's like I said, it keeps changing because you
oh, I
hear,
know. We
well, it's going to be
didn't.
released.
True
It's going to be
story.
released here. It's going to be
Yes,
released
we did
there.
not even know. We didn't even know what we were going to be talking about tonight. Like as late as 3:00. It was kind of like, well, there's all this stuff coming out. So I'm glad we settled on this though. This is So Dwight says, I thought Lars Mikkelsen was confirmed for Thrawn.
That's what everybody was saying, but
Yeah,
it
that's what.
hasn't been
Right.
completely confirmed. But it was like more than likely that's who's going to play him, but it really hasn't been completely confirmed.
Right. And he goes on to say, yes, Chopper was Hera's droid. Then Ronaldo says, well, I read it was canceled. Kathleen Kennedy said they'll probably use some storylines in other shows. And that could actually very well be, too, is that they thought of maybe lifting some of the storylines and putting them in some of their other shows where it would relate. And that could be. I mean, honestly, I'm kind of bummed that it was canceled, to be honest, because I thought that would have been a really nice companion piece to The Mandalorian. Because one of the things that isn't really discussed very much in The Mandalorian is the fact that they do have a little bit of that what's going on with the New Republic vibe.
Well, yeah, they kind of were setting it up at first because when they gave her the whole badge thing, and then I heard at one point Wisdomjig was supposed to take over it.
There we
Bill
go. See,
Burr,
now we're up to 4 likes. Now that's what I'd like to see. Still, there's 2 people that haven't hit that button, but that's all right. Just go ahead.
But Mix Mayfield,
Yes.
was supposed to also, be in that too. So, well, I guess we just have to see.
It is going to be interesting because every time you turn around, it seems like there's a new announcement of some new series. But what's really interesting to me is that you've heard nothing about Lando. Now, keep in mind that the Lando series was actually announced officially by Kathleen Kennedy herself with a logo, I might add. Right? There's this isn't like some fan creating something in Photoshop or something. I mean, this is Lucasfilm creating something in Photoshop. They basically had their logo. They announced nothing about it. We don't know if it was a Donald Glover, Billy D. Williams, combination of the two. Nothing. So, that's the one I'm honestly curious about too. Ronaldo says, I want a Peacemaker type series with Chopper and Mr. Bones. Oh, Mr. Bones is actually a really cool character. I'm not going to lie. He's hands down one of my favorite droids. And he's kind of a reincarnation of, like HK-47 or something like that. Yeah, from, because that was Hunter Killer 47 from Knights of the Old Republic. Ronaldo says the Acolyte had casting news some time ago, right? And yes, they did cast a lead actress, I believe, to play the title character, right?
Yep.
I don't know if there was any other news. They're toying around with the idea. So the new wave of the High Republic novels that's coming out is going to go back 150 years. And I guess it'll be more toward the beginning. And there might even be some Sith Lords. It's funny because when I was on some of the Facebook groups, there's a Facebook group called My Star Wars Life. And somebody had a picture of Obi-Wan and said, he's the first Jedi to defeat a Sith or something in like 1,000 years. And I basically responded, well, slow down. We got to wait and see how this High Republic stuff shakes out, because they're thinking of introducing a Sith in the High Republic. I kind of personally hope they don't, but it wouldn't be bad if they wanted to start maybe planting the seeds of a Bane or something like that to kind of, because you are bumping up against. I mean, you're only a couple hundred years before the Phantom Menace. That's sort of when the High Republic starts. It's kind of in there somewhere. So it is conceivable that you would have some Sith running around in the shadows. So it'll be interesting to see what they do there. But the Acolyte takes place toward the very tail end of the High Republic. So I'm really curious to see what they're going to cast as far as, are we going to get somebody that plays Bane? Are we going to see the whole Rule of Two thing? We really honestly don't know. And that's why I think it's going to be a really fascinating thing to see what comes up. And the Acolyte's another one. You get casting news every once in a while, but you really don't get a whole lot of information about it. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens with that one. Is there any other series that are coming around that we haven't mentioned or talked about?
No, not that. I think we've covered everything as far as up to this point.
Well, before we close it out, what would you like to see as the next series? I mean, not necessarily next, but I mean something that maybe they haven't announced yet. Yeah, to add to stuff.
I mean, of course, I would love to see a Luke series. If they can get Sebastian Stan to play him, I would love to see.
That might be the Mandalorian season 3.
I would love to see. What transpired. Between. And what he went through trying to rebuild the Jedi Order and everything like that. I think that's a really interesting place to explore.
Well, I do hope that the Kira series is actually a go. Because I would love to see something that was focused kind of on the rebuilding of Crimson Dawn, which they're doing right now. You had the War of the Bounty Hunters thing, and now you have a new comic series called Crimson Reign, which the second issue should be coming out soon. So, of course, Darren is he wants to see a Chopper solo series. Which now are you saying that he's related to Han now? Is he taking on? Is it kind of like Rey Skywalker, Chopper solo, or do you mean Chopper by himself? Because I'll tell you, if any droid could carry anything, and listen, we had that one Clone Wars story arc where it was a bunch of droids with only, I think 3PO was the only one that actually spoke any kind of basic or whatever. The rest was just a bunch of beeping. I mean, it was really torturous to watch. Kira series, I wouldn't mind seeing a young Palpatine series. And you guys can go back on our channel, and we did a whole show on who should play a young Palpatine. So I really wouldn't mind seeing something like that. Other than that, I would, like I said, they could take what they were going to do for Solo 2 and Solo 3 and put that in the Kira series and do this whole thing on, the return of Crimson Dawn and a little bit more of the underworld stuff. This could actually overlap a little bit with the Book of Boba Fett in its continuing series. I mean, just a lot of stuff they could do. Chats are pretty active right now with some ideas. Dwight says, I would definitely watch a Bane or Revan movie. Yeah, and that's another discussion too, man. What films they could do. Because I actually think that they could do that. They could make movies, the future of the film franchise, which we should probably do another show on eventually. But what they could do is they can actually have the films sort of carry on the shows. They can almost do like what they do with Marvel, right? So with Marvel, it's all done in films. They're doing the series now too. And what they're doing with the Marvel series is they got a bunch of the series that are starting to tell a story, and they're setting up the next phase. And they could easily do something like that in Star Wars. You have a bunch of series that tell a story and culminate in in that. So what do we got here? Dwight, Bo Wright says, I'm with Dwight on that. Ronaldo also agrees with Dwight. Yeah, I mean, it would be a really great thing, a Bane or a Revan film. I wouldn't mind seeing a Bane series if they want to do like, and they could tie this in with the Acolyte. They could do something to where, it just ties in where you see the origin of or I should say the rebirth of the Sith. So lots of stuff they could do. But I don't know. I think that's a really good start. I think to close it out, what do you think of all these things that have been announced?
I'm looking forward to it all. I think 2022 hopefully will be a prosperous year full of Star Wars, great stories, and I hope we get a lot of our questions answered when they are released.
Yeah, and that's what I'm hoping too. I hope. Now, again, I have to preface this by saying it's just like what we're seeing with the Book of Boba Fett. Look, not everybody's going to like everything that comes out. And there's always a possibility that either it's legitimately, like it's good, it's just some people like it, some people don't. Or maybe in typical Disney fashion, maybe they mess something up. But I, too, am looking forward to what could be a fantastic year for Star Wars. More so, I never really thought that I would say this because I still, to a degree, think that Star Wars really lives in film. Like, that's its primary media, I guess, would be the best way to put it. But I have to tell you, I'm really liking the fact that we're getting a lot of good Star Wars storytelling in this whole medium of Disney Plus streaming series that I think could really spell the future of Star Wars. You can have films that, take a story or maybe you take the totality. It's really tough to do with some of this stuff, though, because honestly, all these series are taking place in different eras. The only thing that you could do is you can take the Mandalorian, Ahsoka, Book of Boba Fett, and maybe make a movie that advances the story. So either the series launch a story for the films, or maybe a movie comes out and that launches a bunch of storylines for the individual series. They could do either or. But I agree. I think this is a great time for Star Wars. I think it's a great time to be a fan. And I think, guys, that we're going to have a lot that we can discuss. I mean, we're only in January. I think 2022 is going to be a good year for everything. And hopefully you guys join us Monday night. This is a good way to kind of plug our Monday show, right? Because we've been reviewing the Book of Boba Fett. You can go back on our channel. You could see our previous episodes. But this Monday night at 8 o'clock, we're going to be live. We're going to be reviewing Chapter 4 of the Book of Boba Fett. There's going to be a lot of stuff that we can talk about for sure on this one. So, we hope that you join us for that. And then, of course, we'll be back again next Friday at 8. More than likely. Because I know between like illnesses and all kinds of stuff, our schedule is taking a little bit of a hit. But we plan to be here for you guys, talking some Star Wars on a Friday night. There's no better way to spend it than with you guys. So with that, look forward to seeing you guys Monday. I'm Eric Vansel.
I'm Daryl Sanders.
May the Force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.